When it comes to creating games, audio design is one of the most underrated and unappreciated parts. The music and sound effects work to create the specific atmosphere the game designer wants, and it's almost impossible to do without. For example, let's take a look at one of the most iconic moments in all of gaming, the Warthog run at the end of Halo 3. It's this intense driving sequence that resonates with so many players, but without sound? It's honestly kind of boring. Playing it is still fun and all, but it just doesn't feel like there's a lot at stake, or it's really that big of a moment with just the gameplay alone. Contrast that with the same sequence, but bringing back in that infamous theme and sound design, and there's an immediate difference. This is the power that sound design has on creating these moments in games, yet a lot of indie devs don't focus on it as much. This is quite the obvious example, but most of the moment-to-moment gameplay audio design goes mostly unnoticed consciously by the player. So that's why I think many smaller indie developers, like myself, normally don't put it nearly as much into it as other parts of the game. Also, I just really don't enjoy doing it, and I know I'm not alone in that fact. For the most part, in any of my other projects, I'm just scouring through sites like freesound.org to find some random free sound effects and music that work well enough in my game to use. But this time, I really want to push myself to get outside my comfort zone and not only create all the sound effects, but the music as well. The music is definitely the more intimidating part, so let's start with the sound first. I first started by just playing through my game a bit and taking note of the interactions that should have different sounds. And after getting that list, I went around my apartment just messing around with a bunch of different objects to see what sounds I could get out. I played around with the raw sounds in Audacity a bit, and got them hooked up into my game. I think they could definitely be a bit better, as I'm not super experienced with layering, so I think I could use that a bit more in the future, but right now they're pretty good. So, let's see how some of those sounds I made look in action. Now that sounds are done, I can move on to making music. Now, here's the thing. I have no musical ability at all. I played trumpet for 2 years in middle school, but that's about the extent of what I have in terms of music knowledge, so it's basically nothing. While I don't have any sense of what a major or minor chord is, I do have one thing up my sleeve, and that's ears. I don't know how to make something sound good, but I definitely know when something doesn't sound good. So I'll just keep messing around with it until it's passable. Before I can even start figuring out where to begin creating a song, I need to determine what type of mood I'm even looking to create in my game, and what genre of music works best to convey that. Since I'm creating a puzzle game, I just want to have a very laid-back type of music that relaxes the player. Everyone knows the frustration of being stuck on a puzzle, so having a slow, chill type of music can definitely ease that frustration. No type of music better fits this than Lofi, which is notorious for being used to study and relax to. Not only is it a great fit for the style I'm looking for, but it's also a very approachable style of music to create for a beginner. I needed somewhere to create this music, and from looking around, FL Studio is one of the most popular DAWs, and it has a free version that should have enough tools for what I'm looking for. After watching a couple videos on the general workflow for creating these lo-fi songs, which I'll have some of the best ones linked down below, I jumped straight into creating it. The process I had was to start with the general chord progression. It took me a couple tries, but when I finally had it done and I tried to move it on to adding some extra instruments, I realized I had overcomplicated it a bit, and especially for my first song, I needed to keep it really simple. So I scrapped that and I went back to just messing around with the chords until I got a new simplified version that I was happy with. That whole process took a while since I had absolutely no clue what I'm doing, so I'll just save it and pick it up tomorrow. Well, I guess you can't save with the free version, which maybe I should have looked into before, so that one's on me, but seems like this will have to be a bit of a business expense, and I can always use it in the future, so it's not too bad for a one-time purchase. Alright, now that I can get back to it, I got to work on a simple drum loop, as well as a basic bass line that just follows the chords, and together it works pretty well. Next up is getting the melody working, which again was a bit of trial and error. I originally had the melody being played by a guitar, but that didn't sit quite well with me, so I ended up changing it back to a piano. Since the song itself was pretty simple, I decided to work on a secondary melody to switch it up partway through the song. While that is the majority of the instruments done, I needed to add in that classic vinyl and distortion effects that Lo-Fi has, as well as adding in some ambient noise, and do some overall final mixing. Now, I don't want just one song, because that'll get way too repetitive and have the opposite effect, frustrating the player even more. So I used that same workflow and went ahead and created 4 other songs. I tried to give each one a bit of a different feeling using plenty of different instruments, so here's a quick snippet of all the songs that I made. Honestly, doing this has given me a new appreciation for the audio mixing in games, and I've come to really enjoy it actually. It used to be easily my least favorite part of projects, but now it's something I'm really looking forward to. I'd highly recommend to anyone, especially if you don't enjoy looking around for free sounds to use, try it, and it might just change how you feel about the process. With that part done, the game is really starting to near completion. The main things left are working on some of the levels and polishing up some of the menus and UI. So, in the next video, this game should be ready to be released, so stay tuned for that one to see how the game turns out.